Have you ever told yourself no to something and instantly your brain freaks out, feeling like you're deprived? Everyone online is telling you not to restrict, and you start overeating just to be on the safe side in binge eating recovery. Your brain starts to make everything more dramatic. If I don't eat this sugar cookie right now, I'll never get another chance. I deserve this. Why is this so hard? Everyone else gets to enjoy this food. Maybe I am restricting and doing this whole food freedom thing wrong. All of your thoughts get louder and more urgent. But the real issue here is no one has ever taught you the difference between restriction and a loving boundary. So you've learned that saying no to food is automatically bad, harmful, and going to lead to a binge. So you've been starting to treat every single no like a diet rule instead of an empowered choice. This is something that happened to me and so many of my clients when I started recovering from binge eating. I was told to never go more than 3 hours without food, to always give myself permission to have anything I wanted. And that led me to continuing to binge eat and gain weight. So this is a topic that needs to be addressed around what does it actually mean to restrict food and what do we actually need to be doing to not be restricting food. It's something that's come up so much with my clients in the Confident Eater program, and we've been going deep together, but I want to give you this definition today so you can stop being so dramatic about it and making yourself overeat because you think you're doing something wrong anytime you say no to yourself. How I define restriction is not giving yourself something you need, okay? This is restricting yourself from something that you truly need. What this looks like around food is if you are restricting your calories or your nutrients. These two things count as restriction, and that is what we want to avoid. This is what I mean when I say diet culture or don't diet. Diets usually restrict your calories to a large amount or restrict your nutrients by eliminating certain food groups. So being in a slight calorie deficit is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's what needs to happen if we ever want to lose weight again. But when we create an intentional large deficit, that can oftentimes put our body into starvation mode, where it is not getting what it needs, and so it panics and requests more. I define this by looking at your estimated energy expenditure right now. If you just were to maintain your weight, how many calories would you need to eat to maintain? If you take away 500 calories from that or more, that is usually too much of a deficit for people. Now, if you are extremely overweight and have a lot of weight to lose, sometimes that range can expand a little bit. But for most people, a safe calorie deficit, and this has been shown and backed by research, is around 100 to 200 calories a day. That doesn't mean we need to go start calorie counting and tracking this, but it does mean that when we start to tune into our hunger and fullness properly, our body will actually achieve that naturally without a lot of effort. And the second piece of this equation is restricting nutrients. So if you are not eating certain food groups, this includes being vegetarian, vegan, not eating gluten unless you have celiac or a true sensitivity to it. I usually don't eat dairy because I do have a true sensitivity to it. That is information from my body. But if we are just cutting out a food group because we heard on the internet that carbs are bad or that we should never have gluten because so-and-so said so, even if it feels okay in our body, that is what I count as restriction. Deprivation is similar. Google's different definition of deprivation is lacking the necessities of life. The necessities of life include calories and nutrients. Those are things we need to survive. So let's clear up some confusion here. Doing something like saying no to wine is not restricting ourselves. We know that we don't need wine to survive. Wine does not have the necessary calories or nutrients that we need in it. So by saying no to wine or tequila or whatever you want to put in there, that is self-care. Okay, so stick with me. Saying no to processed white sugar and added foods with flavorings and processed foods is not restricting yourself because sugar and flavorings are more of a substance than a food. They literally do not have any nutritional qualities in it beyond being a source of carbs. Yes, sucrose, which is what processed white sugar is, exists in nature within certain foods naturally, but it never exists as an isolated substance. We need to do this complicated 50-step process in order to find and get isolated sucrose, which is table sugar. So that itself has become more of a substance. Think of something like poppy seeds. right? Poppy seeds exist in nature, but they contain a small amount of opiate compounds that can be isolated to make a drug. That drug, even though does it technically exist in nature? Yes, it doesn't exist in high amounts. It's the fact that we isolate that drug that makes it addictive. So sugar is the same way. The reason that saying no to sugar is not depriving or restricting yourself is because there are hundreds, if not thousands, other sources of carbs that actually have nutrients in them. Sugar is a deceptive food. It lies to our taste buds about what's coming in. It makes us think we're getting a higher level of nutrition than we actually are. And if this is all brand new to you, you're gonna wanna go check out episode 85, where I talk more about how sugars and flavorings contribute to overeating and confuse our body's nutritional wisdom. So saying no to sugar and specific processed foods that have a lot of added flavorings in them, this is not restriction. This is breaking in an addictive reinforcement loop. Now, when we say no to these types of food, what makes all the difference is shifting our mindset around them. And this is what I see a lot of people do wrong, is they try to just cut out sugar without really understanding why they're doing it, or changing their mindset to an abundance mindset and a choice mindset. So having this powerful mindset is important. This sounds like thinking, I can have whatever and do whatever. I am in charge of me. There is nothing I have to do or can't do. I am making this as a choice. This is what gives you your power back and makes it so you don't want to rebel against this decision you're making. If you feel triggered when I talk about food and sugar in this way, it's because you are turning this into a diet with strict rules. You only rebel against restrictions that you don't want to follow. You don't rebel against boundaries that you agree with. Some examples of this to illustrate: I restrict myself every night from scrolling on Instagram Reels for too long. I restrict myself from texting my ex, even though he might pop in my head from time and time again. I restrict myself from spending thousands of dollars on a fancy purse, even if it's really cute. And all of these restrictions feel easy for me to follow because I don't actually want to do those things that badly in the first place. I like having that restriction because I'm not telling myself it's a restriction, right? Thinking something's a restriction is a mindset. I feel like I'm not doing these things as a choice that is a loving boundary for myself. And loving boundaries are self-care. Saying no to yourself is not a bad thing because it means you're saying yes to something else. When I am saying no to myself from scrolling Instagram Reels all night, I'm saying yes to getting good quality sleep. When I'm saying no to spending thousands of dollars on that fancy purse, I'm saying yes to my financial goals and freedom around my money. That's what I'm focusing on when I tell myself no. I'm not thinking about how restricted I am and how deprived I am because I can't do any of these fun things. I think, no, it's so much more fun for me to get a good night's rest, to feel good in my body, to like the number I see in my bank account, to not feel guilt and regret over buying something I don't really want to buy. So when you say no to something like binging on Christmas cookies, you're saying yes to feeling good in your body. You're saying yes to food freedom. Yes to everything else, feeling and tasting good that day. Yes to no more cravings after that. Yes to no more urges, even after you have that one cookie. Have you ever noticed how oftentimes when you eat that cookie, you try to get rid of the urge by eating it, but you still just continue to have the urge for more? You have that one cookie and you're not satisfied, and now you're having to deal with the urge for the second cookie. The urge didn't even go away. You still have that craving there. Focus on what you're saying yes to, not what you're saying no to. All right, let's go through a little checklist. Are you restricting, or is this a loving boundary? You're restricting if you're hungry and not letting yourself eat. If you're tired and not letting yourself rest. You're low on nutrients and not giving yourself the foods that could provide that. You're forcing rules that you hate. You have a loving boundary if your body wouldn't feel good with more food. You want energy and clarity instead of heaviness. The food doesn't align with your values or how you want to feel, and you don't actually really want that specific food. Then if that thought comes up of, I feel restricted, I feel deprived, I want you to do this little mini exercise and ask yourself these questions. Ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I say no to this food? Is that fear even true? What are you truly needing instead right now? Does this food meet that need? And what would feel like a loving boundary instead? I recommend pausing this episode and maybe taking a minute to write down those questions so you can go through them and journal on them later. You might think that when you're saying no to a Christmas cookie, You're missing out on joy, pleasure, or connection. But what is important to see is that that cookie never actually gave you those things. You just perceived that it was giving you that thing. So what else could actually give you that joy, that connection that you're really looking for?